On Kimmel to every local hospital.
He's played cops, cowboys, and now Ty Cobb. He's earned an Oscar, but through it all, Tommy Lee Jones has remained a fugitive from fame.
How come so many people are afraid of you?
Tonight, in his first primetime interview, an intimate look at one of Hollywood's most mysterious stars.
Breaking up, it's not just hard to do. It can land you in court.
I don't feel that I have done anything wrong.
Before you pop the question, see what happened to one man who decided he wanted to dump his fiancée.
You thought she was out to get money?
Deborah Roberts on a match made in heaven that ended up in legal hell.
They are some of the most famous pictures the world has ever seen. All seen first by the eyes of Alfred Eisenstadt.
I don't want to be a star. I'm one of the boys.
And at 95, he's still at work. Lisa Rudolph develops a picture of the world's most prolific photographer.
Dateline with Jane Pauley and Stone Phillips, plus Tom Brokaw, Katie Couric, Maria Shriver, and Bryant Gumbel. From our studios in New York, here is Bryant Gumbel.
Good evening. It's a fact of life that kids, especially teenagers, spend a lot of time on the phone. So it should come as no surprise that so-called chat lines have become the latest craze of some young people. The lines seem innocent enough, but there is a downside. We found teenagers who became obsessed, in one case, even running away to live with strangers from the chat line. Here's Lee Thompson with part 3 of our Dateline investigation.
What's up? You've reached the rap line.
It really gets you addicted because you want to keep calling these people.
It's a totally teen phenomenon.
I got hooked on it, and I kept calling it.
Telephone chat lines.
Welcome to the line with you in mind.
I spent almost 24 hours a day on that line.
Anyone can join this party line of the young and the restless. Half a dozen can share conversation on one line. It's advertised as free, but it can be very expensive and dangerous.
I never thought it would lead to this. It just never crosses your mind when you pick up a phone. I mean, it's a phone. Who would know it could tear your family apart so much?
What did you talk about?
Anything. You could say anything and everything.
But you talked for hours at a time.
Oh, God, I talked for days at a time.
Alexis says she got addicted to chat lines after she changed schools and started having a lot of trouble fitting in.
What did the chat line do for you that you couldn't get from your friends?
I guess more acceptance, you know. I was always a very insecure person.
For Alexis, the cost of this long-distance belonging was very high, higher than anyone could imagine.
I admit I was totally hooked on that line.
Every time things heated up at home over the phone bills, the 14-year-old would take off across the country to live with adults, men and women she'd met on the chat line.
There was ranging from 19 years old to, I think the oldest I was with was 25.
And she did it not once or twice, but 6 times.
You just blindly went off and met these people?
No.
Without a second thought?
All right, no thought at all. It's just, you know, I'm getting away from my problems. It's always in the TV or newspapers that, yes, you know, this person's been raped and killed or so-and-so, but it never occurred to me that it could actually happen to me.
But it occurred to her father, Bill, who was desperately trying to find her.
Yes, we worried every time she was gone.
And Alexis had run up more than $4,000 in long-distance bills. When her father couldn't pay, the phone was disconnected. But that isn't supposed to happen. 2 years ago, Congress passed a law to protect families from phone nightmares like this. The law says services like chat lines are supposed to be on 900 numbers, numbers parents can have blocked. It says you can dispute a 900-call charge without being disconnected. To get around the law, chat lines have moved their services onto regular long-distance lines, and that strips parents of the power to protect themselves and their kids. As a result, Bill had no recourse when Pacific Bell disconnected his service, and he was reduced to calling Alexis's chat line friends to try to find her.
A place to talk to girls and guys from all over the hood.
We spent hours at payphones calling people on the chat line.
It worked, and he brought her home. But then he almost lost her for good. Alexis says her life was a disaster, and the bills and the anger and the guilt were too much.
And I attempted suicide and ended up in intensive care on my birthday. And that was like one of the worst times in my life.
It's been a pure hell. Nothing mattered to her as much as being on the phone.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for calling. You've reached the most raging party line in the country.
17-year-old Kyle Berger was also lured into the chat line scene, much to the dismay of her mother.
It makes me angry because the kids don't know any better.
My friend gave me the phone number. That became my new set of friends.
Mary Berger says kids often get started after reading the dozens of chat line ads in magazines like Rolling Stone or Spin. The ads say it is hip and hot and sexy and free. Free.
Did you think it was free?
The introduction to the party line was misleading.
With her mother's permission, Kyle showed us how to get to her favorite chat line. It's a 515 area code.
The one and only, your personal connection to the hottest free party lines around.
It said free.
And then...
Do you believe you were doing enough to try to cut her off?
I was locking up the telephones. I would lock them in the trunk of my car. And you have to understand, too, that by the time I had my first bill, we were halfway into another billing cycle. So, you know, probably $300–400 worth of charges already in place before I found out about it for the very first time.
Mary also found out that Kyle was hearing more than just idle chat on these lines.
Do I have any daughters? No.
When we heard the man on the other end of this call tell Kyle he was watching a child porn film, we cut it off.
Ugh.
Kyle's mother went on a crusade to track down who was behind all of this. It turned out to be a complicated trail full of surprises.
You might think her search would take her to Las Vegas, New York, L.A., but that 515 area code on her telephone bills led her to this small town of Jefferson, Iowa. It's become the unlikely crossroads for hundreds of chat and sex lines. This area may be known as the home of corn and cattle, but now chat lines are a major cash crop.
According to public records, in the 2 years since the small Jefferson telephone company hooked up with the chat and sex line operator, its profits have jumped from $352,000 a year to $2,216,000 a year.
It's amazing. I mean, obviously they've latched onto a gold mine.
The Jefferson Telephone Company first told us it had severed its relationship with the company that actually programs the chat lines. Jefferson Telephone refused to be interviewed on camera, but in a letter to Dateline said, because some people find parts of the programming objectionable, we did the right thing in terminating the contract. But Kyle Berger had no trouble getting Jefferson's 515 party line. Jefferson admits the contract with the company requires it to keep the lines open for up to 1 year after giving notice. And who is this contract with?
His name's Ian Eisenberg.
When Mary Berger complained to the Jefferson Telephone Company, she was sent to Ian and Joel Eisenberg.
I said, I'm not going to go away. I want you to know that I'm going to be your worst nightmare.
The man in the Rolls Royce is Joel Eisenberg. Eisenberg's business took in more than $63 million a year, according to documents filed in court in 1991 by the IRS. He then was running 72 separate corporations, almost all in the phone entertainment business.
Eisenberg gained national attention in the late 80s when he ran a TV ad encouraging kids to call Santa Claus on a 900 pay line. It instructed children to hold up the phone to the TV, then the commercial played the telephone tones, and the call was automatically connected.
The IRS has investigated whether Joel Eisenberg underreported his income. The agency raided his Seattle offices in 1991. No charges have been filed. Meanwhile, the elder Eisenberg has passed the chat line business off to his son, Ian. We wanted to talk to Joel and Ian Eisenberg. They wouldn't respond to our request for an interview, so we tried in person.
Mr. Eisenberg, how do you do? I'm Lee Thompson from Dateline NBC.
Hi.
I wonder if I could talk to you a little bit about your business.
Seconds later, Ian showed up for work.
Hi, are you Mr. Eisenberg?
You are?
I'm Lee Thompson from Dateline NBC. I wonder if I could talk to you a little bit about you and your father's business. We'd like to talk to you about the chat lines. People say that you're running ads that say that the chat lines are free, and then they get these huge bills, and they want to know how you can call your chat lines free.
While Ian Eisenberg didn't answer, industry insiders say the chat is free because you only pay the long-distance charges. So how do people like the Eisenbergs make so much money? Well, Jefferson Telephone says it gives the Eisenbergs a cut of what it collects. We went to the Federal Communications Commission to ask if it's legal for a phone company to do that. Now the FCC is asking questions too.
We've commenced an investigation of the Jefferson Company, including an audit of its books. And that compensation arrangement is one of the things that we're looking at.
People like Mary Berger never heard of chat lines until 8 months ago. Now she says they represent expense and exploitation that never seems to end.
I felt victimized by the Ian Eisenbergs of the world, and I felt victimized by the phone companies, and I felt victimized by my own daughter.
What did it do to your family?
It made enemies out of us. I'm sorry.
It tore your family apart.
It put my daughter in touch with people that I felt weren't good for her. It brought a lot of hatred and animosity into my home. It's not been easy to deal with.
If you feel that your child is spending too much time on chat lines, try calling your local phone company. They can't help too much, but there are a few that will block the number for you.
Still ahead.
How much did you know about her?
Well, as it turned out, not a great deal.
And that could cost him a fortune. Meet the man who was sued for doing something that millions of Americans have done. Plus, he has friends in high places.
He's a terrific guy. Always has been.
And friends to whom he's a mystery.
He's a loner, and he doesn't socialize that much.
Tonight, get up close and personal with actor Tommy Lee Jones. Here now is Stone Phillips.
Still ahead on Dateline, a love story with an unusual twist. A courtship that ended up in court. They were engaged to be married, but when he broke it off, she filed suit using a law that dates back more than 100 years.
It's a case of an old law lying around waiting to cause trouble like a landmine.
The breach of promise law was created at the turn of the century to protect a woman from an unhappy fate. If a man dumped his fiancée, she was seen as damaged goods and doomed to be a spinster for the rest of her life.
She really was both materially and socially damaged in major and tragic ways.
By the 1940s, however, as women became more independent, breach of promise laws fell into disfavor. Then, guess what started to come into vogue as engagement insurance? The diamond ring.
From our studios in New York, here again is Bryant Gumbel.
When you're hot in Hollywood, it seems the scripts just keep on coming. And no one's hotter in Hollywood these days, or busier, than Tommy Lee Jones. Yet in this age of tell-all books and tabloid tales, he remains one of Hollywood's real enigmas. And while getting to know him may be a bit like trying to rope the wind, tonight Tommy Lee Jones is speaking out.
Tommy, this way, please. Tommy, can you hear me? Tommy, this way. Mr. Jones, sir. Tommy, this way.
For an actor with a supposed distaste for showbiz glitz, the ultimate irony.
Oh, constant demands. I don't hear any praise.
Tommy Lee Jones this week getting his own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Apparently, even a reluctant celebrity gives in to schmoozing when he's on a roll. And Jones is on a roll.
Lie after lie has been told about me. My entire life, I've been misunderstood.
His newest film, Cobb, tops off a remarkable year that has seen Jones star in 5 different films and pick up an Oscar for his work in The Fugitive.
Listen up, ladies and gentlemen. Our fugitive has been on the run for 90 minutes.
But despite the fame, Jones remains a man of mystery, intensely private and guarded. His image is that of a gruff malcontent, with little patience for the movie scene or the Hollywood press corps.
Oh, you didn't believe me the first time?
No, I didn't.
It's not for me to say.
Okay, I'll take your word.
How come so many people are afraid of you?
I don't know. But, I mean, and what an embarrassing question. I mean, I don't really know how to, I mean, it assumes that I believe that everyone's afraid of me. And it assumes that everyone is afraid of me. And I don't think everyone is. So I find it hard to answer.
I guess I was alluding to that a repeated theme in articles about you is the idea that people approach you warily, that there's this smoldering beneath the surface that intimidates so many of them.
Oh, Lord. It does seem to be a theme that runs through some of this entertainment industry, quote, journalism, unquote. These articles are not written by the most observant or hard-working of journalists. I am not quick to anger.
No?
I will say. No, I don't think so. I mean, do I have to prove it?
No.
Tommy Lee Jones is one of the most intelligent, perceptive, gentle people when he wants to be. And he also can be a real tough guy in real life, and I think that's what gives him his strength.
He can be aloof, and he is aloof, and he can be sometimes abrasive. He doesn't suffer fools well. He has, I guess, an inherent distrust of the media based on his experience in life.
No place but Texas.
Tommy Lee Jones' life is grounded in the rolling hills of his home state. An eighth-generation Texan, he was born in San Saba in 1946 and still has a ranch there, sharing it with his wife, Kimberly, and their 2 children. Kimberly, she has been quoted as saying that you hate to be alone.
I do.
True?
Yeah.
That surprises me.
Really?
Yeah, because so much of what one reads about you and the image seems to be that you're a guy who likes to be alone, that in fact you're kind of a loner. Never has been true?
I don't think so. No, I mean, I've done plenty of time alone as an only child with no brothers or sisters. Well, I don't particularly enjoy solitude at all.
As an only child of an oil worker who was often abroad, Jones was sent off to the prestigious St. Mark's School in Dallas, where he encountered the acting bug and was bit badly.
I looked at it and I said, I think I can do that. And I suppose it was the creativity of it, the idea of laboring with your imagination at the advanced age of 16 or 17.
Jones graduated from St. Mark's in 1965. The times they were a-changin', and so too was Tommy Lee. He traded Dallas for Cambridge and St. Mark's for Harvard, where his first roommate found that the intensity that characterizes Tommy Lee today was already in evidence.
Well, I don't think that's entirely new, because he's always projected an image of real personal strength and intensity. He's a terrific guy, always has been, and he's always been very strong and very intense. But not far underneath that is just a real warmth and capacity for friendship that's really wonderful.
While majoring in English, Jones was also an offensive guard on the Harvard football team. Number 61 in your program, his last game against Yale proved to be one of the most famous.
To me all my life. The grass had never looked that green, nor the sky that blue.
That lucky game was for Jones a precursor of good fortune to come. It seems Harvard's team doctor, Thomas Quigley, had caught some of Tommy Lee's off-the-field plays and come away impressed.
When I was about to graduate, he asked if I had thought about going to New York, and I said I didn't know. He said, well, if you do, take this letter and give it to my daughter. She's doing a play.
And I opened it. It was from my father. And it said, this young man excels at Harvard. He is a good football player, but he wants to be an actor. Take care of him. So I introduced him to a few agents, and right away he got a job.
And I had one line. One of them had a line. The line was 5 words long.
Were this a fairy tale, it would be that a big-time producer was sitting in the audience, heard you deliver the hell out of those 5 words, and raced up and said, "Son, you're the next star"?
No. They said, you know, "Son, you're one of the chorus."
In his first film role, Art imitated life. Just a year out of college in 1970, Jones played a Harvard student, Ryan O'Neal's roommate in Love Story.
Hey, Barrett got a new goodie? Yeah,
Gently worrying about me.
Jones worked steadily in the 70s, but much of it was forgettable. He did the pilot for Charlie's Angels.
I never told anybody about that, did you?
And he was Dr. Mark Tolan in the soap opera One Life to Live.
A lot of people remember that. There are some people who watch daytime drama every day.
Though the money was in feature films and Tommy Lee's heart was on the stage, TV movies provided Jones with his breakout roles. He won an Emmy portraying Gary Gilmore in The Executioner's Song.
Let's do it.
He was nominated for a second Emmy in 1989, and his work in Lonesome Dove re-energized his feature film career.
Gus got blood poisoning in his legs.
He's never stupid in a movie. He never makes an embarrassing choice. And he takes chances. But then he won't get hung up on where's my position in the industry, how much money am I making.
I recall that when asked about what you like about acting, you said, the money's good and it's easy.
Did I say that?
Suppose it's not easy, is it?
It's not easy. It is very hard work. It's very stressful. The hours are long, and sometimes the pressure is enormous.
Get a fax ID on Kimmel to every local hospital.
Until The Fugitive, Tommy Lee's work had always been steady, but he genuinely feared that his role of Marshal Gerard would prove his undoing.
We had pretty much winged it all the way through the movie, changing the script every day, and sometimes starting the day with no shot list at all. And at the end of the movie, we did the last shot, and I looked around and said, "Jones, you're in the basement of a hotel in Chicago, and you're shouting exposition to a room full of blue bags hanging from the ceiling."
Richard, I know you're innocent. I know that Frederick Sykes.
You'll never work again, clearly. It's come to this.
Of course, The Fugitive proved a runaway hit and earned Jones an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor.
I didn't kill my wife. I don't care.
On Oscar night, Jones was sporting both a limp and a nearly shaved head, byproducts of the work he'd already started on his newest film, Cobb, which opens today.
I'm the writer, and I am a legend, and legends are not pathetic.
Cobb didn't care what people thought of him.
No.
You?
Do I care what people think of me?
Yeah.
Of course I do.
Though Jones claims to care, there are clearly limits to the accommodations he'll make. Like Cobb, he demands acceptance on his own terms, and while he won't claim, as Cobb did, that achievement is all that counts, it's clear that his work is what he wants to be judged on. To him, it's a simple proposition.
I want to work with a great director who is also a good pal and a beautiful script, and do some work that almost everybody in the world will come to know and love, and that'll, elevate the quality of life on this sorry planet. Doesn't everyone?
This year, Jones broadened his horizons by slipping into the director's chair for the first time. His TV movie, The Good Old Boys, will air this winter on cable.
Coming up, he was in love.
I thought this would be a start of a great adventure.
But you won't believe what an expensive adventure it turned out to be. Also, can you guess what year it was? The Dateline timeline. Here again is Stone Phillips.
Now, Dateline follow-up. A brief look at what's happened since we brought you these stories. In April, we told you about Bob Robertson, an Air Force chaplain who was a former fighter pilot. Robertson thought the U.S. should not go to war in the Persian Gulf, but broke the rules by telling a newspaper.
It wasn't my intent to engage in any political activity.
The Air Force disagreed and recommended he be discharged. But he appealed because his pension of $30,000 a year was in jeopardy. Last month, the Air Force Secretary ruled Robertson will get his pension, but he had to retire. In October, we aired a story about Damian Osby, who shot and killed 2 unarmed men he said were about to kill him. His lawyer said Osby suffered from urban survival syndrome, a condition that prompted him to kill or be killed.
The streets are like a jungle over there.
But Osby was convicted of 2 capital murders and faces life in prison. In August, we reported on another unusual murder defense. Lawyers argued Eric Smith killed 4-year-old Derek Roby because of a psychological rage disorder linked to a drug his mother took during pregnancy. But Smith, age 14, got the maximum sentence, 9 years to life.
Now the Dateline timeline. All the following events happened during the first week of December. Do you know what year it was?
Rita Lavelle, former EPA commissioner, was convicted of perjury. Elizabeth Taylor admitted herself to the Betty Ford Clinic in California. The Big Chill was on its way to winning 3 Oscar nominations.
Your brother sure does have a long, tall, skinny woman.
Oh, no, that's a hollyhock. This is my sister-in-law.
The Jeffersons was in TV's top 10, and Lionel Richie had the hot song. All right, what year was it? 1983, 1984, or 1985? The answer when Dateline continues.
Reuniting vacation lovers.
Where did you spend the night?
In a field. I'm Jenny Jones. Tonight after Extra on Channel 2.
The death penalty, does it really make a difference? Does it help to stop the violence? America Close Up has some surprising answers. Get close, get answers on NBC Nightly News Monday.
So what year was it? The Big Chill was very hot. So were the Jeffersons, and All Night Long was the top single. It all happened the first week of December, 1983.
Here again is Stone Phillips.
Before you say I do, you have to say I will. But what happens if you change your mind somewhere between the proposal and the altar? As Deborah Roberts reports, it could cost you more, a lot more, than just heartache.
We were just feeling very happy and upbeat and euphoric.
Oregon rancher Dick Springs was a man in love.
I thought, here's a lady that has an exciting life that I can be part of, and I have a life where I can really show her some things, and I thought this would be a start of a great adventure.
But what Dick Springs never dreamed is that his great adventure would end in disaster and make headlines all across the country.
How much did you know about her?
Well, as it turned out, not a great deal.
The woman he fell in love with is Sharon Wildey, a 50-year-old Chicago attorney. They met in January 1992 through a mutual friend and hit it off right away.
She kept talking about how much she loved the out of doors and that as soon as she could, she wanted to live in the country.
It was the start of a whirlwind romance, with Dick flying to Chicago on weekends so they could get to know each other. He learned that Sharon's a mother of 4 who'd grown up in an abusive home, put herself through law school, and been divorced 3 times.
And I really admired her spirit and her grit and thought she was really a pretty terrific lady.
As for Dick, he comes from a wealthy New York family and graduated from Princeton. He, too, is divorced and has 3 grown children. In early March, just 8 weeks after they'd met, Dick and Sharon went on a Florida vacation.
At this point, you were involved in a pretty heavy romance?
Yes.
Did you feel that marriage was probably going to be next?
Wasn't thinking in those terms, no.
But Sharon Wildey was. She suggested the idea to Dick as they sat in the Orlando airport.
She said, well, what would you think of getting married? And I sort of taken aback, but I said, well, I think I could do that.
So she essentially popped the question.
Yes. Oh, very much so, yes.
Back in Chicago, they went shopping for an engagement ring. Dick says Sharon didn't find one she liked, so he had a ring specially made with a price tag of $19,000. He also opened a Chicago bank account and gave Sharon blank checks to pay off the ring and for other expenses. 5 days later, she wrote herself a check for $6,000, calling it a loan. Dick never thought twice about it.
She kept saying she never wanted to be financially dependent on a man, and at the time of the engagement proposed a prenuptial agreement.
It seemed like a blissful romance until the family spent 2 whole weeks together, including a visit to the ranch. Dick began having doubts.
It wasn't a good experience here at the ranch. It was fairly obvious that they were really uncomfortable in the country.
And when Sharon went on a weekend business trip, leaving Dick at her Chicago apartment with her daughters, he had more misgivings.
I started to question just exactly what she did feel for me. That very morning, for instance, I get up to leave, and she doesn't even get up to kiss me goodbye.
It was then that Dick decided marriage would be a mistake. He wrote Sharon a letter, breaking their 7-week engagement, but suggesting that she keep the diamond ring and $10,000 left in his bank account. He also said that he still wanted to be friends.
You essentially dumped her through a letter. Kind of heartless, though, isn't it?
Well, I had had 3 previous attempts where there had been relatively small things that I had tried to talk over with her, and I'd been met with a very defensive posture and then aggressive.
Why not a phone call, though? Why a letter?
To give her some time to sort of deal with it in her own way first.
Eventually, they discussed his decision over the phone and in letters. Then, Dick got a bombshell, a letter from Sharon saying she intended to sue him.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe, 1, that this could be done, and 2, I couldn't believe that a person who had professed to love me would do this.
And he was just as shocked to find out that the law was on her side. If you live in Illinois, an engagement is hardly a casual matter. In this state, it's a contract. Break the engagement and you break the contract. Break it without legal justification and you may have to pay damages. That's what Dick Springs found out in this courtroom in November of 1993. The state's Breach of Promise Act comes from a centuries-old law which lets a jilted fiancé sue for actual damages, usually defined as out-of-pocket expenses lost due to a broken engagement. But Sharon Wildey asked the jury for more than that. She wanted money for pain and suffering and psychiatric costs, as well as lost income, even though the Breach of Promise Act seems to rule out damages for emotional distress and forbids punishing the person who broke the engagement. Wildey and her lawyer declined our requests for an interview, but her psychiatrist testified that the breakup caused Wildey a major depression. He said it would require intensive therapy for 3 to 4 years if she's ever to have another intimate relationship.
Sharon was wounded, and we felt wounded rather badly from it.
3 of the jurors discussed their decision with us for the first time.
How were you so sure that her emotional problems were directly resulted from the broken engagement and not something else?
I don't think it was directly resulted. I think it was carried over time. Like you said, she had very traumatic experiences from early childhood.
But that's not Dick Springs' problem.
No, I think he's more or less with the last straw on the camel's back.
And Mr. Springs, I think, was innocent of any intentional wrongdoing.
As for Wildey, most jurors sympathized with her pain, but some questioned her motives.
I perceive her as being an opportunist.
An opportunist?
Yes. The opportunity was there, she took advantage of it.
You thought she was out to get money?
Yes, yes.
Yet you voted in her favor.
I couldn't ignore the fact that the law was broken.
The crucial point there is that he broke the contract.
Was your verdict intended to punish Dick Springs?
In a sense, yeah. It was the way he broke off the engagement. You know, I felt that wasn't the proper man enough way to do it.
He did terminate the engagement in a very abrupt and very cold-mannered way.
So what price did Dick Springs have to pay for breaking a 6-week engagement to a woman he'd known for only 15 weeks? The 7-man, 1-woman jury voted to award Wildey $25,000 for past and future medical costs, $60,000 for lost income and $93,000 for pain and suffering, a total of $178,000 in damages.
That sounds medieval.
It's better for the engagement to end than the marriage to end.
I don't think I'd ever propose under those conditions.
The huge award shocked men and women alike. Author Katha Pollitt is one of a number of feminists who say the law goes too far and should be scrapped.
We don't want the law to micromanage our romances.
It's anti-feminist, Pollitt says, because it encourages women to be injured victims rather than mature adults responsible for their own choices.
It's very tempting to say, yes, here is a woman who stood up and fought for her rights. But this is wrong.
We're talking about a level of devastation.
But divorce attorney Kurt Muller says the breach of promise law actually helps women.
It's her responsibility to make herself a functional member of society again. And she can only do that with some of the money that she's going to get from Mr. Springs.
Isn't this law really just about money? And people decided to stick it to somebody because they broke up with them?
The law has no other way to make people whole than to give them money.
Is this your dad's hay?
Yeah.
Dick Springs doesn't accept that. He's angry that a law allows him to be hauled into court for doing what millions of other people do all the time. He's appealing the verdict.
A case like this is a case of legalized extortion. A plaintiff can hire an attorney on contingency. The defendant has to immediately start paying out funds in order to defend himself.
But if the jury had ruled in your favor, would you have won?
No, I would have lost.
Dear Mr. Springs, do you want help? If everything in this news article is true, I'm ready to take on Ms. Wildy when you're finished.
For now, Dick Springs has an unexpected source of comfort. He and daughter Amanda sort through hundreds of letters he's gotten from strangers, most of them women. Some want to meet him.
I was very touched by your story and felt compelled to write. You're a special man and deserve the best, and I certainly could give it to you.
Will you look at relationships differently now?
I hope not. I don't want to be a cynical and untrusting person.
You've spent close to $100,000 already on this case. Why not just settle it and save yourself the frustration and the money?
I feel if I settle it that it's some kind of admission that I did something wrong. And I don't feel that I have done anything wrong. If I settle the thing, I think I'll always regret that I capitulated to pressure, that I took the easy way out. I think I'll be unhappy with myself as a person for the rest of my life.
Dick Springs' appeal will be decided soon, but a judge has already reduced the jury's award by $60,000. And by the way, 19 states have breach of promise laws, including Texas, Michigan, and as you saw, Illinois.